Hi all, welcome back to i-TUTOR IAS Academy Tamil Nadu History NCERT series. Today we will discussing chapter 11, that is the Great Revolt of 1857. Okay, so why it's important in history? It is a watershed event in Indian history actually. The marking the first large scale unified armed resistance against British colonial rule. It forced the end of the British East India Company's rule and shifted power directly to the British Crown, and sparkling intense nationalist sentiment and changing the course of India's freedom struggle. So this is actually the turning point of Indian history, Indian modern history, and end of it's this revolt end the company's rule. Okay, first of all, and the Government of India Act 1858 was passed, ending the East India Company's administration and bringing India under direct control of British Crown. And British nationalism, although it failed to oust the British, it served as a major turning point, sowing the seeds of nationalism and acting as a precursor to organized freedom struggle. And symbol of resistance, structural changes happened after this war and unity attempt. So, despite its failure, it demonstrated a significant, albeit limited, an attempt at political unity, with many leaders pledging allegiance to a central authority. The Mughal Emperor Bahadur Shah suffered. Okay, so that's this about the intro of this revolt. And so, in this unit, we will discuss the nature of the Great Revolt of 1857 and the underlying causes of revolt, immediate cause of the outbreak of revolt, and the cause of revolt, cause of for the failure of the revolt, and effect of the revolt. We will discuss in this unit. And in this first slide, here is the picture. So, places where the Great Revolt of 1857 was vigorous. Okay, so this is that Indian map, and you will get you can Google it also. So, you will get an idea of the places where the Great Revolt happened. And 1857, the revolt saw the seed of Indian nationalism, which lay dormant in the subconscious of the Indian people, and it started the movement which was continuous struggle against the British rule till 1947. And hence, the nature, character, and cause of this great revolt of 1857 should be studied in order to understand the subsequent events. And the nature of the revolt, the historical writing of British scholars underplayed the character of the revolt of 1857. Sir John Lawrence was the opinion that revolt was purely military outbreak and not a conspiracy to overthrow British rule. And on the other hand, the revolt of 1857 is hailed by the Indian scholars, especially by Veer Savarkar, as the first war of independence. Okay, so the different opinions of this revolt is there in between, historians. And two distinguished Indian historians, R.C. Majumdar and S.N. Sen, have analyzed the revolt of 1857 in depth, and the two scholars differ in their opinion. And S.N. Sen believed that the 1857 revolt was part of the struggle for Indian independence, and R.C. Majumdar maintained that the outbreak before 1857, whether civil or military, where a series of isolated incidents ultimately culminated in the Great Revolt of 1857. Okay, so that is about nature of the revolt. And causes of the revolt are, one of the political cause is the discontent and disaffection manifested in the form of revolt against the British government were not confined to the ruling chief and royal families alone, and on the contrary, the British rule was disliked by the people at large in any region when it was newly introduced, and anti-British feelings were particularly strong in those regions like Burma, Assam, Coorg, Sindh, and Punjab, were unjustly annexed to the British Empire. And the doctrine of lapse, particularly its practical application by Lord Dalhousie, produced grave discontent and alarm among the native princes who were directly affected. And economic causes, the huge drain of wealth, the destruction of its industry, and increasing land revenue had become the common feature of the latter half of the 18th century, and the East India Company, after attaining political power, used it to fund the growth of British trade and commerce at the cost of Indians. And the British damaged the Indian trade and manufacture by imposing a high tariff in Britain against Indian goods and by encouraging all means the import of British goods to India. And in England, the ruin of the old handloom weavers was accompanied by the growth of the machine industry. But in India, the ruins of millions of artisans and craftsmen was not accompanied by any alternative growth of new industrial forms. And a new plantation system introduced in the year 1833 resulted in incalculable misery for the Indian peasants. And this was the result of permitting Englishmen to acquire land plantations in India. And the hard hit were the peasants on the indigo plantation in Bengal and Bihar. Social causes: the Englishmen showed an arrogant attitude towards the Indians. Indiscriminate assaults on Indians by Englishmen became quite common. Also, a general alarm was raised among the Hindus and Muslims by the activities of the Christian missionaries, and the educational institution established by the missionaries inculcated Western education and culture in the place of Oriental learning. The native population felt that were losing their social identity. And military causes: discontent against the British Raj was widely prevalent among the Indian soldiers in the British Army. The Indian sepoys in the British Indian Army nursed a sense of strong resentment at their low salary and poor prospect of promotion. The British military officers at times showed least respect to the social value and religious sentiments of Indian sepoy in the army. Thus, although the generally faithful to their masters, the sepoys were provoked to revolt, and the Vellore Mutiny of 1806. In last chapter, we discussed Vellore Mutiny and precursor to the 1857 Great Revolt, and was the outcome of such tendencies on the part of the military authorities. And another important cause of Sepoy dissatisfaction was the order that abolished the foreign allowance or bata when they served in foreign territories. And thus the discontent was widespread, and there was an current before the volcanic situation of 1857. All that needed was only a spark to set it a fire. Okay, so that is the military cause. And the beginning of the revolt, how this revolt began. And in 1857, revolt was sparked off by the episode of the Grays cartridge, and the new Enfield rifle had been introduced for the first time in the Indian Army. Okay, Enfield rifle, and cartridges had a greased paper cover whose end had to be bitten off before the cartridge was loaded into the rifle, and the grease was composed of fat taken from beef and pig. And the religious feeling of Hindu and Muslim sepoy were terribly wounded. The sepoys believed that the government was deliberately trying to destroy their religious and cultural identity, hence, they raised the banner of revolt. And the event that led to the revolt began on 29 March 1857 at Barrackpur. The Mangal Pandey, a sepoy, refused to use the greased cartridge and single-handedly attacked and killed his officer. Mangal Pandey was hanged, and the regiment to which he belonged was disbanded, and sepoy guilty of rebellion punished. And the British, instead of diffusing the explosive situation, paved the way for mighty crisis by the above act. A chain reaction was set in motion at Meerut in 1857. 85 sepoy of the 3rd Cavalry Regiment were sentenced to long term of imprisonment for refusing to use the greased cartridges, and therefore on 10 May the sepoys broke out in open rebellion and shot their officers, released their fellow sepoys, and headed toward to Delhi. And General Hewitt, the officer commanding at Meerut, was helpless to prevent the army's march. Okay. And next morning, the rebellion army reached Delhi, and the city of Delhi fell into the hands of the rebellious soldiers on 12 May 1857. And Lieutenant Wilshire, the officer in charge of Delhi, could not prevent the mutinies. Soon, the mutineers proclaimed the aged nominal king and Bahadur Shah II. So, this is a picture of Bahadur Shah II of Mughal dynasty as the emperor of India. And very soon, the rebellion spread throughout northern and central India at Lucknow, Allahabad, Kanpur, Benares, in part of Bihar, Jhansi, and other places. Okay. So in Delhi, the leadership at Delhi was nominally in the hand of Bahadur Shah, but the real control was exercised by General Buck Khan. On the side of the British, the combined effort of Nicholson, Wilson, and Bede, Smith, and Neville Chamberlain enabled the recaptured Delhi by September 1857. In Delhi, Emperor Bahadur Shah too was arrested and deported to Rangoon, where he remained in exile till he died in 1862. Okay, so this is the picture of Nana Sahib, and here is Tandya Top is there. And in Kanpur, at Kanpur, the revolt was led by Nana Sahib. Okay, and the adopted son of Bajirao too, and the last Peshwa. And Nana Sahib expelled the English from Kanpur with the help of the Sepoys and proclaimed himself the Peshwa. And Nana Sahib, in his effort against the British, was ably supported by two of his lieutenants, and one was Tandya Top. So, this is Tandya Top, and the other was Asimullah. Sir Hung Wheeler, the commander of the British garrison at Kanpur, surrendered on the 27th June 1857. But soon Kanpur was recaptured by the British commander Sir Colin Campbell. Okay, so that is the situation on Kanpur. And in Lucknow, the principal person responsible for the revolt in Lucknow was the Begum of Oudh. So this is Begum of Oudh picture, and with the assistance of the Sepoy, the Samindas and peasants, the began organized an all-out attack on the British. And Henry Lawrence, the chief commissioner, tried to defend the British, and Lawrence was killed in the bomb blast during the fight. And the final relief for the British force in Lucknow came in the form of Sir Colin Campbell, who suppressed the revolt. So in Lucknow, that's the situation. And Jhansi, so there is Rani Lakshmi Bai in Jhansi. The widowed queen of Gangadhar Rao played a heroic role in this revolt, and Rani Lakshmi Bai was affected by Dalhousie's doctrine of lapse, was joined the Tandya Top, and the combined effort of Rani and Tandya Top saw the capture of Gwalior. Meanwhile, Sir Hug Rose defeated Tandya Top and stormed Jhansi on 3rd April 1858. He then captured Gwalior. The Rani of Jhansi died a soldier's death and on 17 June 1858. Tandya Top was captured and hanged on charges of rebellion and murdered in the massacre of Kanpur. And in Bihar, Kunwar Singh, a ruined and discontented Samindar of Jagdishpur near Oudh, was the chief organizer of the revolt in Bihar. He fought the British in Bihar, and Kunwar Singh sustained a fatal wound in the battle and died on 27 April 1858 at Jagdishpur. Ultimately, the 1857 revolt came to an end with the victory of the British, and Viceroy Canning proclaimed peace throughout the India. So that is in this main cities: Bihar, Jhansi, Lucknow, Kanpur, and Delhi. Okay, and causes for failure of revolt. What is the cause of the failure? The first and foremost, the cause was the revolt failed to embrace the whole of India. Different sections of society, such as money lenders, merchants, and modern educated Indians, were actually against the revolt, and the lack of interest shown by the intellectuals in movement was a serious setback, and the resources of the British Empire were far superior to those of the rebels. And similarly, the insurgent lacked a carefully concerted general plan or a strong central organization to plan the movement of the army and oversee their strategy. Okay. And on the other hand, the British possessed their better equipment. In addition, the British were aided by new scientific inventions such as the telegraph system and postal communication, and this enabled the British to keep in touch with all part of the country and to maneuver their troops according to their needs. Okay, so advantages in communication system, and their materials they used in revolt are very advanced, and all the said factors combined to cause the defeat of the rebel of the 1857 revolt and ended in the victory of the British. Okay, but it was also a turning point for Britishers, because the crown rule were started in India. And the significance and effect of the mutiny. The revolt of 1857, though completely suppressed, had shaken the very foundation of the British rule in India. For simple reason, the revolt exhibited the popular character, and it brought together the disgruntled sections of society to rise against the British rule. And the common people rose up in arms, often fighting with spears and axes, bows and arrows, lathis and scythes, and crude mulks. However, the civilian revolt was not universal but sporadic in inconsistent. Nevertheless, it added a new dimension to the chapters of the 1857 revolt, and another significant aspect of the 1857 revolt was Hindu Muslim unity. And as far as the effect of the revolt are concerned, it brought about fundamental changes in the character of Indian administration, which was transferred from the East India Company to the Crown by Queen's proclamation of 1st November 1858. At the same time, the Governor General received the new title of Viceroy. Lord Canning had a unique opportunity to become the Governor General as well as the first Viceroy according to the Act of 1858. So, Lord Canning, so he was both Governor General, and after this revolt, what happened? The Crown rule directly started, and so it's a Viceroy according to the Act of 1858. Lord Canning proclaimed the new government at Allahabad on 1st November 1858 in accordance with the Queen's proclamation, and the latter has been called the Magna Carta of the Indian people, and it disclaimed any extension of territory, promised religious tolerance, guaranteed the right of Indian princes, and pledged equal treatment to her subject Indians and Europeans. And the revolt of 1857 ended an era and sowed the seeds of a new one. And the year 1857 is a great divide between the two landmarks in Indian history. One was that of British paramountcy in the first half, and the other is that of the growth of Indian nationalism in the second half of the 19th century. Okay, so that is all about this 1857 revolt. And so far we discussed there are two views on the nature of the Great Revolt of 1857, and the fundamental causes are varied, such as political, economic, such as social and military. We discussed, and the immediate cause was the personal grievance of the sepoys, and the cause of revolt not universal but sporadic with the scattered civilian participation, and the British, with their superior strength, suppressed the revolt. And the suppression of the revolt has revealed the weakness of the Indian sepoy and leaders of the revolt. And the result and importance of the 1857 revolt we discussed so far. So, this is about today's section. So, here we end up. And for more NCERT classes and more videos, you just do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much.